It's another chilly start to the morning, but it's not as bad. I can already feel that I'm getting warm.
I'm getting warm.
But once we start moving, it will cool down quick. But we're gonna try it again today. Hopefully the bite's better today than it was yesterday. So we'll see what happens. Chad, what do you think?
Well, I think it's warmer this morning. The water temperature is about the same. It's supposed to get close to 80 though, so hopefully the fish turn on and we'll be able to film some today.
Onward and upward. Okay, I wanted to explain something to people is I get a lot of questions, how do I set up on a spot? Well, what I typically do is if I'm marking waypoints, I mark them in succession to where the structure begins and where it ends. So what I do is like this time I'm set up right in the middle of them, and what I'll do is since the tide is outgoing, the bait is going back towards this area, so we'll move up, but I always like to be ahead of the structure when the tide is moving. If it's incoming or outgoing, I always like to be ahead of the structure that I want to fish. Now if the tide is slack, then I want to be right on top of it. As you saw in the Friday fishing forecast from last week, we struggled on Friday, so we hoped on Saturday it would get a little bit better. Well, unfortunately it did not. We had that high pressure sitting on top of us, so it made fishing tough. I mean, we bounced around quite a bit. And so as you just saw, I talked about how I like to position the boat on my waypoints. And what I'm going to talk about a couple of different things also. Since we didn't get a lot of fishing video this last weekend, I didn't think anything was kind of worthy of it. So I'm going to do a little bit more of an educational thing. I'm going to talk about how I catch bait at the bridge, share a technique with you guys that I don't share with a lot of people, but I'm going to share it with you guys, which is a lot of people. And it works well, especially when the tide is ripping. We were able to get bait pretty quick this last Saturday. We had to run to the bridge. It finally kind of pushed off the flats. I heard there was some bait still on the flats, but I guarantee after this front that we just had, it's not going to be on the flats anymore. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to show you a video of how I set up. It's an older video, but we still do the same exact thing now. And I'm also going to talk about the underwater structure. I have some underwater video, and I'm going to talk about my thoughts on the snapper. As you'll see in the underwater video, the snapper are still here. I think their diet has changed. We caught a couple, but the video shows that there's quite a bit down there. And I think they're keyed in on crustaceans, to be honest with you. They were spitting up some shrimp and crabs and things like that, along with the grouper. But the grouper is still, like this last weekend, the grouper seemed keyed in more on the whitebait on Saturday than they did on pinfish. I'm trying to think if we caught a fish on a pinfish. I think we caught one or two, maybe three. So the bait choice has changed a little bit with that. So I'm going to go over what I look for, or what we do at the Skyway when we're catching bait, what we look for on the bottom, and you'll see that some of the stuff is barely off the bottom, sea fans, things like that, but it's holding fish. So let's get with it, and I hope you guys learned something from this video, and hopefully this coming weekend is going to be better than last weekend. As you see in this video, I'm throwing the chum on the back side of the piling, which allows it to get sucked down in that eddy and slowly disperse. And as you see to the side of me, the tide is ripping out. So if I was throwing that chum into the tide, it would pull it away from the boat and it would make it very difficult. So I always throw the chum on the back side of the piling when the tide is ripping at the Skyway. It allows that bait fish to come up, and I can throw my net without the net flying by and going past the bait and not having enough to get to the bottom. In this first video, you'll see where there's some large rocks around and you see the snapper swimming around, and on the sonar you'll definitely pick those up, and this is what it's going to look like on the sonar. Now when you see this type of structure, it's key to be able to set up on that structure correctly, and that's what I talked about earlier in the video of how I like to set up on the structure. Now in this case, the tide was not moving at all. It was slack, so the fish were swimming around, and that's why we were able to sit right on top of this structure. In this video you'll see where the structure, there's not a lot to it. There's a little bit of rock, some sea fans, and you'll see the snapper swimming around, some grouper in the far background. This type of bottom structure is harder to detect on regular sonar. On the side imaging, I can pick it up. When you see it on the sonar, as you'll see in the video coming up, that it's almost flat. There's slight little humps, not the big humps that you see that look like camel humps, but just small little humps. And that's exactly what we're looking for when we're looking for bottom structure that's not obvious. This is harder to find on regular sonar. But if you learn how to read your sonar, you'll start picking up spots like this to where even though you're not seeing a lot of activity, this actual spot we caught a lot of grouper on. Again, it's kind of obscure. It doesn't show up well on sonar, but if you take your time and stop, and when you find an irregular bottom on your sonar, stop and fish it. It won't hurt to stop and fish it and see if there's anything down there. Now I want to talk about a thing that we've been asked a lot here lately is the length of our leader. You know, what are we doing on our length? And I kind of described it in my last video to where, you know, Chad and I are doing, I used to do like 3-foot leaders, but after watching Chad do very long leaders and noticing that he wasn't having to tie his leader to the braid as often as I was, so he made a believer out of me, so I changed. And now I do 3 arm lengths of leader. So 3 arm lengths, and so I can get it out there just like this. So that leaves me with about I guess about 7 to 8 foot of leader line that I use and Chad uses. And what's nice about that is that it allows us not to have to tie braid to the leader as often. And that's why we do such a long leader, is just simply because of that. It's not because of the eyesight or anything else like that. It's just simply because it's easier for us that we're not constantly having to retie and do those types of things. So it's just retying the jig and get it out there, especially when the bite is turned on. You want to get that bait down as quick as possible. So for those that you don't know, we are now supplying our own 20-pound fluorocarbon leader. I've been using this for a while now, and it works great. I've caught some big grouper, big snap, 29.5-inch grouper, 27-inch grouper, a ton of 24, 25-inch grouper. So if you're interested, we do have it for sale on our website at tampabayfishingchannel.com, along with our jig heads. Again, we really appreciate the support that everybody's giving us. I couldn't ask for better support. And if you do have any questions, if you want to see a video about something, let us know. I would love to do it. We're going to do a little bit more inshore stuff too, kind of break it up a little bit. And if anybody has any questions, just let me know. If you have questions about, you know, bait or anything else like that, just let us know.